If you look deeply into the palm of your hands, you will see your parents and all generations of your ancestors. All of them are alive in this moment. Each is present in your body. You are a continuation of each of these people. I am the sum total of my ancestors. I carry their DNA. We are representatives of a long line of people. We come from everywhere. A long line of peoples that goes back to the beginning of time. When we meet, they meet other lines of people. We bring together the lines of men. Egungun wa yana wanini, yana waneni, yana wanini. Egungun wa yana wanini, yana waneni, yana wanini. Egungun wa yana wanini, yana waneni, yana wanini. Our ancestors speak to and through us. So I've been guided to speak a little bit and give my 2 cents on channeling ancestors, spirit guides, StarSeeds. Let's see where we go. So first, for myself personally, my connection with my ancestors is like my breath. It's like water. It's like something that is not separate from me. So I think I'm being called to speak a little bit and demystify a little bit channeling and our relationships, our connections with our ancestors, and the ones that are here with me now. I call them my Womtang clan. They've been kind of instigating a little bit and wanting me to speak a little bit more, especially on behalf of some of the new grid kids. I did record a podcast yesterday about the new grid kids, and they mentioned that there's things that I missed, that there's some stories and some of my own personal experiences that I meant to put out there and share because it may serve some others who experience either similar stories or it helps just demystify it in a way. Because again, to me, channeling, there's so many different ways that we do. I mean, we are the portals. We are the vessels that allow these energies and ancestors to live, to bring forth their gifts and offerings as well, because we're the ones here that are embodied. And so if the first thing I probably would say, and I've said this with regard to like, StarSeeds, new grid kids, and also with the ancestors. I mean, we honor them. We honor every single being. I mean, I honor, and I speak of ancestors. I also mean ancestors, not just physical bloodline. Ancestors can be, for me, I have a really deep connection with trees. Trees are ancestors. Plants are ancestors. The stones are elders for me, yeah. And so in each person's being, you will have certain attractions and energies, and that speaks to who is a part of your entourage, yeah. And I'm being encouraged to speak in this now moment as well, to not deify in a way, StarSeeds and ancestors, in the sense that they're saying that they're part of us, that they get to live on through us. So they are just as much honoring of who we be. Yeah, they don't get to continue the legacy if we're not here. And that's something that's been very helpful for me as I work with spirit as a WombShaman, and in the work that I do. They're friends, they're connections, they're like, you invite them over, they're with you. I say it's you invite them over, but I mean, to me, there's just literally a part of my life. They're a part of me, and the conversations, and as I've learned to deepen my dance, and again, from birth, I mean, this is where even if ones are not aware of who their guides are or their ancestors, and again, I've been called lately to speak a little bit more about some of my adoption stories, so even ones who have been adopted, and maybe you don't know your lineage, or you've never met your birth parents, and it doesn't matter. The ancestors that are connected to you are with you. They fill the room. And for someone that has the ability to see, I mean, I've been able to, in the beginning, I always could feel the presence of different energies. And I remember at a certain point in my journey, I remember saying to one of my Mumara's teachers, she was clairvoyant and she was seeing spirits, and I was like, I want to see like you. Here's like my little girl self of like, I wish I could see. And she's like, Amber, your clairsentience is amazing. And she goes, that's actually more accurate. Sometimes it can get distracting to see. So again, I speak to that because everybody has different ways of connecting with spirit, with their guides, with their ancestors. Sometimes it's through feeling, sometimes it's through seeing, sometimes it's through smells. I know even my son, this is where to kind of weave in some of the stories, and as it relates to channeling sometimes StarSeeds and the new grid kids, they have different ways of perceiving energy as well. And so just because even, maybe parents around them, maybe they're not attuned to those frequencies or sight, or energies in different ways. But the children, as they're coming in, I mean, it's very real, right? Just like you believe in God, divine source, and there's things, or if you do, you know that there's an energy and there's things that are operating that you can't see, but you know it's there. The StarSeeds and kids have new grade kids have such attunement, and in different ways. I know even when we was talking about channeling and different things, and people like, your 6 sense, right? In actuality, there are so many more senses than 6, right? You look at even your eyes, you've got your 2 eyes, and then people say your 3rd eye. It truly, for the StarSeeds, new grid kids, and myself included, and many, 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 many others, I am not alone in this. That's the first eye. The 3rd eye is actually the first eye. It's what, even if you have no sight, you in the womb, you're already sensing, you're already connected to your lineage, to your ancestors, to your star teams. It's and it comes through in different ways. Through sense. I remember driving in the car. My son was really little. Well, not really little. So my sister Lisa had just passed, and again, for me, the line between life and death, there really is no death in my reality, because the infinite beingness of soul, it doesn't end. It kind of goes maybe into a different realm or a different frequency, but spirit is eternal. It's just what is. Yeah. And again, I'm speaking from my perspective, and I encourage anyone who's listening. If you work with me and you know this, I've always said, only take what is resonant and useful for you. Yeah. But this is me just sharing some of my experience. But after my sister had passed, I remember Masihi, my son, in the car, and he's like, Mom, he goes, Lisa's here. And I knew she was there. I could feel her energy. And then and I said, how do you know? He's like, I smell her. And so even that, there are some starseeds that their sense of smell, or they'll hear, you'll get a message. They'll either literally hear a voice, or it can come in pictures. And they're wanting me to speak a little bit more about this too, in the sense of how sometimes those transmissions come through. Because again, in lineages and in ancestral lines too, sometimes if you go back before colonialized language and different things, you can have ancestors that are speaking to you in languages, in a tongue that you don't know. But because spirit is able to be translated in any language, and this has been part of my experience as I've traveled and lived in many lands, many countries all over the world. It's easy to translate because you will get pictures. Sometimes you will get pictures, or they will learn how. This is sometimes too, even the ancestors and their mastery as their. This is why I like to call them ascending masters as well, not ascended as in period, right? There is something to that, because even as they've left their physical body, sometimes depending upon the life that they've lived on earth and different things, they're still seeing things from different angles and ascending. And so as far as frequency translation, when you get to work with your guides and you get to know them on a deeper level, and your ancestors, they also have learned to adapt their frequency to bring translations in the way that you can receive it. So I can still have an ancestor who's speaking a different language or different, and they'll be able to transmit and send pictures directly to my first eye. And then I will either see a movie, or sometimes even I'll see a picture of a book that I have on my shelf. Here's a book. Turn to this page. There's very specific ways that they can communicate beyond just verbal in the same language. And so it's a really fun process, especially when you don't have any negative kind of religious or the energies around saying this is evil and it should only be, I don't know. This is where, again, our ancestry, and I think even when I speak of like African spirituality, it was way before any kind of religion. It was a communion with nature, and that the divine is contained in everything and everyone. So even the aspects when people like really demonize the dark, the traditions that come through in my ancestry, in my body, the devil doesn't exist. That was an added piece that came from, colonization. That is not, there's light and dark, but all of it is part of the whole. And all coming from one source. And one of the things that I personally love about African spirituality and the practices that just simply resonate for me, as that there's a relatable energy. And this is where I think even the fact that I'm being called to speak about ancestry and channeling and spirit guides and all of that is because it's so accessible. It's not supposed to be that only certain people are able to. Everyone can. That's normal. And when you travel, let me watch my tone. Let me watch my tone a little bit. But when you travel, and when I had the ability to meet different traditional healers and sangomas that have become family, that literally when I was watching them do some of the rituals and practices, I'm like, I do that. Like things that you just naturally do without even thinking about it, because it's a part of you. And that's where I think even our ancestors and the spirits and the divine, there was never ever supposed to be any separation. There was never supposed to be, in order to connect in this way, you have to go through the sun. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of different stories, and I think people have to really find in these now moments what is their resonant truth. If there's old systems of study or belief or Religion, I do think sometimes it can block. Now, this is not to say, because I've lived in many lands where of so many different cultures and religions, and I see threads of truth in all. Absolutely, in all. And I've seen people in practicing different religions who literally, and then even as my own childhood, I was raised very specifically with a specific religion and school of thought and dogma and conditioning, but it had no connection to me. And it really taught me to demonize what was so much a natural part of me. And that's, again, the connection with spirit and ancestors, and me speaking to them as they are friends. They're part of your entourage. They are your colleagues. And that's why I think I'm meant to mention too, that not deifying in a sense where there's this worship and then like putting ourselves so lowly. It's colleagues. They're your tribe, and they want you to win. They're on your team. Yeah. And so when I think of that, like being on the same team with people, you don't deify. Everybody has their roles and different gifts and things that they offer. But at the same time, honoring, I really want for the ones that are listening to honor themselves as the vessel that is here on earth, because without you being embodied here on earth and able to receive some of the transmissions and messages, they don't have much to do either. So I don't know. I think it's a beautiful co-creation and collaboration. And I think my practice when I was a massage therapist and cranial sacral therapist, the fact that I was able to work on so many different people and bodies, and see what ancestors, what spirits come with them, and what messages in those ways. It's like you get to hear the tonal frequencies of different ones. And as far as the StarSeeds as well, there's a lot that has to do with empathy, which is, I think that's one of our senses too. It should be one of the first senses, because we really, we feel. I mean, that is when we come into the physical body. Before we were taught to disconnect with our bodies, whether it's through conditioning in school, being trained to ignore the body, or to, whatever, to overly focus on the mind. But the empathy and the feeling realms are a very natural way to connect. And also acknowledging that your physical body is the ancestor. So if you're wanting to connect deeper with your ancestors, or, why can't I connect with my spirit guide? The first thing that my entourage would say is, like, get in the body. You need to be in your body, and to really start practicing with intuition, feeling and exploring those things. If you get a hit, and sometimes too, it's like signals. If you start to ignore it, like even hunger, the example of being hungry, right? If you ignore the hunger pains, and after a while, it's like your stomach stops growling. Like you won't get those signals anymore. Same for women, as far as sometimes even your cycles and different things. Sometimes it stops communicating. Your body stops communicating, or you've tuned it out so much that you're just simply not hearing it. And so it does take kind of this slowing down, coming into the body. And I am saying this for our StarSeeds and New Grid kids as well, because as much as we are advancing in the information age and technology, and there's a lot of that, it's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. But we still need the aspect of humanity and embodiment in order for it to be in right relation with the power of one, with all, yeah? Because then this disconnection can be a little bit dangerous. And So, connecting with the physical body, receiving imprints. Sometimes I receive, when I was working a lot more on bodies, that sounds kind of funny, like just random bodies. But my clients, when I was doing body work for at least 10 years as a private practice, 9-10 years, the messages would come through in sometimes storylines. Sometimes I would get a song, smells, feelings. Sometimes my hands would be placed on their body, and then I would feel something in my body. And I would always know. Yeah, this is also why I think having some kind of practice of, I don't care what it is. Sometimes even a lot of the new grid kids, StarSeeds, they don't even relate to sitting meditation in the way. There's so many different ways to meditate. Yeah, there's so many different ways to connect. Some people can do it through walking. Some people do it through dance, through movement. Some people you can do it through breath. One of my favorite modalities is trance. I love that as a vehicle to access my own soul self, as well as connect with some of my spirit allies. But you have to know what is yours and what is someone else's. So if I place my hands on somebody's body, and I know for a fact, because I'm already balanced, even if I'm working on someone, I mean, I wouldn't even be touching them if I've not already learned how to center and be in my body. Because that's also can be dangerous. You can be transferring energies that need not be transferred to another person. So it's really important to be able to stay connected to your own vessel and your own body. But then at different points, I would place my hands on their body, and I would feel something in my body, and then I would maybe get a picture or something to say. This is where sometimes even the speaking aspect. It took many years for me to really get confident in using my voice with clients, especially if they were new and they were coming to me in the beginning, and it was like deep tissue therapeutic work and like this, and then all of a sudden here's my own exploration and kind of this seeping of how my ancestral lineage and connection, and then me meeting their ancestors as we come together. It's fascinating, but it's also really important to know what's yours and what is another person's. And so sometimes even if those impressions, if I would feel a pain or I would feel something in a certain area of my body, it was only to receive the transmission and the message, which would guide me and direct me with where to work. Sometimes I would also receive imprints past lifetimes. So maybe they're having issues in their bodies and this is what's going on. And they can maybe say, well, it's because of this and I've been carrying these bags and but I'm touching their body and I'm getting past lifetime and I'm getting things that are coming up through those aspects. There's so many different ways. And this is where, again, I'm meant to kind of link ancestral connections also with the new grid kids, because this is a very natural thing for a lot of the StarSeeds that I work with to connect with. And it can be overwhelming because they're feeling so much. They're also extreme bullshit detectors. So if you put on a smiling, happy face and you know, I mean, even this, and I'm saying this in complete love. Yeah. Even if my tone changes, I mean, I'm just very animated in my speaking, right? But know that I'm coming from such love, and I would love for parents and also ones connecting with their children to be able to know that even if you don't see something, or you think that they don't know, they know. And the fact that if you're hiding it, if there's things, and sometimes people do that, and that can be love too. I have utmost compassion even as a parent where you think, well, this is too much. I'm not meant to share this with them. You know, let's just put on a happy face. What happens with StarSeeds and new grid kids is they begin to distrust your energy. And so then later on, when you're wanting them to confide in you and trust you with different things that are happening with them, they know energetically if something's wrong, if there's turmoil in the family, or maybe there's financial issues, or maybe there's depression or addiction or different things. They know. They fucking know. And so what happens is then they're looking at your energetics, they're feeling what's in the room, and then you're saying the opposite is true. And I speak for myself, from ones who, again, and I honor my parents, the parents who raised me. And I saw from very early ages, I could see their imprints. I could see their wounds. I could see when there was things that were coming up that they were having a flashback from their childhood. And all of these things, completely normal to me. And so when they were masking things and when they were acting like everything was okay, or they would have a explosion and an emotional break, and then pretend it never happened. For a starseed, new grid kid, it is an emotionally unstable environment. And so as much as ones want to assume that, we're protecting our kids, or if there's problems in the marriage or different things, and you assume, or sometimes even with miscarriages, and this is, again, maybe for a little bit, some of my sister mamas and midwives, and the kids are so keyed in and attuned. They're reading these energies anyways. And so if there is sadness and depression, and I know that it's true that you have to be age appropriate with certain things, but as much transparency and truth as possible, and not underestimating what they are capable of handling. Because sometimes people say, well, no, we want to just paint this picture for the kids, but yet really they're receiving those imprints, and they're receiving the transmissions, and they're seeing what is bullshit. They're seeing that there is inauthenticity and this person in front of them, which also then, as adults or as they grow, it actually can cause more damage because it's not stable. It's not trustworthy. That piece just felt really, really important about a certain level of transparency. And I know for myself personally, I've gone through many different stages and growth and evolution with my son and as a mother. And I know for me, there was maybe certain things that we've even talked about later on and said, okay, he said, what was going on during this time? And if there were things, especially as we traveled, that were sensitive in ways that even based on the country and some of the work, when I say like my underground railroad, that I could not speak of. I still made sure to the best of my ability that I explained what I could and what I knew was safe to say. And it also acknowledged that I know you're feeling some things that you can't see, but I will explain this in a different moment in time. But I need you to know that I'm okay and that this is okay. So it's like, as far as their ground and their safety, there's certain things that there's a transparency. And this is where I speak to sometimes even moms who've had, if they've lost a child and they're grieving and there's a miscarriage, sometimes that child, that starseed, has already been connecting with the soul and spirit of that baby. Yeah. And so then all of a sudden they're not there and mom's pretending that, nothing, everything's fine and something. I just encourage the parents out there to the best of your ability, open those lines of communication. And you may be surprised that they may be bringing through some channelings and some messages from those starseeds specifically that may give you some deep peace and comfort to know that that spirit is alive and well. So, okay, what else? I think as far as spirit animal guides, I want to share a couple stories. So spirit animal guides, like for me, in a lot of the rituals that are a part of my life, connecting with ancestors, of course, but also spirit animals in nature. We have all of these allies that are alive, and are sentient beings that have messages and things that they want to transmit as well. So my first experience with one of my spirit animal guides is a white tiger, and I was in Big Island in Hawaii, doing lots of trance and soul hunting and different rituals. And we were doing a ritual of calling in our spirit animal. And so with spirit animals, I mean, maybe everyone has their own process in their own way. You could, just have an affinity to a certain animal, yeah, and then explore that, see what the gifts of that animal bring. You could consult Almighty Google G, but I think the most authentic way is to connect energetically with the spirit and the animal itself, to be able to ask it directly to inform you. And that's a practice that you can invite in and allow for the answers to come. That's part of developing intuition. And when I speak of intuition, I, as an embodied and a whole being, we need all of our aspects. But in the sense of energy and channeling, intuition is the elder of intellect. And for me, that's a fact. Yeah. That when your intuition is really, really clear, and the messages and the imprints that you get, whether it's through dreams, however your relationship, your connection with your inner voice, your intuition, it does have rank over the intellect, because the intellect can't possibly know things on multi-dimensional realms. The intellect can only know what it studied and what you kind of put in it, and then that way. Intuition is unfathomable. It's so vast. It's so vast. So again, back to spirit animals. I remember putting on my blindfold, going into a trance, doing the breath of fire, and asking for my spirit animal to come to me. And at a certain point, because again, for me, trance, it's usually depending upon the purpose in which I'm going in and what information I'm going to get or to retrieve. It was a few hours, maybe probably about an hour into it, and all of a sudden I look to my left, and I see this gorgeous white tiger sitting in a chair, like upright, sitting in a chair with, back against the chair, and his legs crossed, like very ladylike, sitting with the leg crossed. And he was wearing my clothes. Like that time I wore a lot of, and it was Hawaii, so it was hot. I wore a lot of sarongs. I've always loved adornment and jewelry. So he had these necklaces around his neck and rings on the paws. And I remember kind of being shocked. And he looked at me. He's like, "You seem surprised." I'm like, "Well, okay, a tiger. I love the energy of like white tiger. This is really cool. Fantastic. But why are you sitting there like in goddess attire and where?" And he goes, "I'm still a fucking tiger." Meaning the energy and the spirit that he was bringing was that of beauty, of grace, of elegance, of the goddess, of me. But at that time, I think I had a lot more of an edge and defensiveness in some ways, yeah. I think I was a little bit more, especially at that stage in my life, especially with my practice, and I was very much I think motherly and nurturing in the sense of clients, but I was also very much had access to the aspects of my young energy in the sense of business and all of those things. And so his energy came to remind me that I could still soften and connect with the energy of a tiger. It's like a tiger is a tiger at the end of the day. He's not running around like prepared for battle and, all of those different aspects, that he was just chilling, legs crossed, wearing beautiful clothes. And that was my first introduction. And he is very much present for me, and is one of my allies. So that's just an example of the spirit animal connecting. And I prefer in its authenticity for the energies to come on their own. If you're invocate and doing an invocation, that allow the energy to come. And that reminds me, and I have a soul brother who's a soul brother from another mother who's passed from this life, but he's here, and he's reminding me to tell the story, the spirit animal of a sister friend who, at this same trance ritual, and there's a whole group of us, calling in our spirit guides, wanting to meet our spirit guides, our spirit animal. And she's a German woman, and very, very adamant about her schedules, her exercise, her routines, very much in control of her physical vessel in so many ways. Well, she did this spirit animal trance, and she was so pissed. She was angry. And it was like, why? Who's your spirit animal? Whatever. She got a sloth. Okay, so a sloth, the energy of a sloth, right? I mean, you have to acknowledge that every animal, every spirit, insect, every sentient being has its purpose and its gifts. It just, you have to see what it is. And then also what the message from that spirit animal to you is. So for her, she gets this sloth. This sloth shows up, but he doesn't say anything. There was no message. She gets done with the trance, and she's like, and of all of the animals that are out there and whatever, and I get a sloth? She was furious. And my brother Wilbert, who's here right now, he's like, you just have to see what comes for you. I mean, the message also, sometimes you can invoke and you can call on your spirit guides and something, but you also have to let the answer, you have to live your way into the answer and allow those transmissions to come through. So, okay, she met her spirit animal. It was a sloth. She had no other information. Well, time goes by. Everybody's back in, their home countries or states, whatever. And she retells the story of how she then got the pieces and was so grateful that her spirit animal was a sloth. She was swimming in maybe Hawaii, or maybe she went to New Zealand. I don't really remember the details, but it was a place where it's known also for riptides. And she was an avid swimmer, really, really strong swimmer, could swim for miles. Like, she's one that would do all of these different kinds of, I don't know, I'm not in that world, but like triathlons, and she did a lot of different things. And she was swimming, and she got caught in a riptide. And at the time, and this is probably the benefit too of why it was so profound, where she got the image of this sloth when she was first meeting her spirit guide. And then the next time that sloth appeared was when she was in this riptide. And she, knowing her nature, knowing her determination, and feeling like, I can get out of this, I'm a strong swimmer, the sloth showed up and said, just relax, just float, just relax. And she said to, and sharing of the story of her connection with this sloth, that had she not, if she followed her own nature, her own personality of do, and you can did it, you can beat this, you can, that she would have died, that she was swimming by herself, and that she would have died. And so by listening to the message from her spirit animal, from that sloth, she relaxed, and she just let go, and she allowed herself to float far enough and out enough where all of a sudden she was out of the flow of the riptide. And again, the sharing of that story, that every animal, every spirit animal, ancestor, they come through with messages that are poignant and perfect for us. And we can't make it be something that it's not. And so again, it's beautiful to be able to look up different animals and look up different energies. But I think it's fantastic to see directly what the animals are communicating. And again, when we're talking about ancestors as well, I have an entourage of literally just what I call my soul family trees. And they have offerings, they have wisdom to share. And like I said, with the stones, and they're ancient elder beings. My Sangoma, Sangadma in South Africa would always say that as well, as far as connecting with the plants when she was teaching me different things, and always in Zulu names, yeah. But she said the plants, they literally tell her what to do with them. So there's sides where I think it's beautiful, where you can learn, and there's a beautiful practice. And I think combining both all worlds is beautiful. Everyone can make it their own. But allowing the ancestors in plants, in trees, in animals to speak. That's another thing that I meant to speak about in this now moment, as far as how it relates to channeling spirits. The spirits of animals, and how they speak and communicate, and the telepathic energies. And this is, again, I think I'm making up a little bit because I did not tell enough stories as far relating to the new grid kids, because a lot of what I speak to, again, myself as a new grid kid, I may be one of the older ones, or whatever. I think there is things that I take for granted because it's just a normal part of my being. But I meet other starseeds and kids and beings who telepathic communication is absolutely normal. I know even with my son when he was a baby, and even when he was in my womb, a lot of the stuff that I do with womb oracle transmissions, to me, again, because spirit is spirit, you can receive communications that doesn't have to be in a physical body. I literally just get messages and communication from the soul of that spirit. But I remember with my son when he was little, I mean, it was telepathic. It was very, very easy. And even if I was, we lived the first 4 years in Indonesia, and I could be at the clinic, the clinic, and maybe he was in the rice fields. I mean, obviously within a short distance, like motorbike, maybe 2 minutes away. But I could be at the clinic, and I could literally remotely travel to where he was. I could feel him in my body, and I could feel, he needs me. Yep. And I could literally transmit my consciousness to the room where he is and feel, okay, I'm coming. And always, even I think my Balinese sisters would be like, Ibu Amber, like, how do you know? Because I would come home and it's like, and I was still breastfeeding too at the time. And she's like, well, how do you know? I mean, first of all, come on, moms, and we are, there's a mother wit and a connection that just is. Yeah, it's just is. It's a part of our innate nature. But being able to be in another location, which is, again, even speaks to some of the work that I do now, especially as I've gotten tired in the sense of so much traveling and loving the energy of being home. I don't have to travel to different countries and different spaces. I literally can connect in those ways. And the StarSeeds and New Grid kids are doing that kind of thing effortlessly, and they come in doing that. And again, I was guided to speak about ancestry in that way, and channeling and kind of communing in those ways, because I think more and more starseeds that are coming Earthside, even if parents if it's brand new to them, if you're open and if you're kind of willing to have a beginner's mind and just in awe, in fascination, just like you're getting to know, getting to know this child, this being. There's all kinds of gifts. And just as someone meets me, I mean, you could assume, and you may know some of the things, or you could feel, oh, maybe she knows this, or she, but you don't know until you actually interact with that being and connect. And I know that my voice is meant to speak on behalf of some of these starseeds, and that way that I know if the parents themselves haven't yet developed that communication, which I think is always possible. That's with the ones that I work with. It isn't about having somebody outside you constantly be a translator. It's fine in the beginning, and it's helpful. And I have had so many teachers. I honor also the ones that I've gotten to apprentice and walk with in ways that I literally got to see and be activated in my own remembrance. I am so grateful, but it's a beautiful experience to be able to connect in so many different ways. And even myself, I mean, there's new aspects as I continue to grow and evolve. I get to experience different aspects like, oh, I forgot I knew how to do that. And it's also interesting to meet other beings. Yeah. And this is where sometimes on a level of soul family, it is fun to connect with other ones who have different kinds of clairvoyance and gifts, and ways of seeing, dream interpretation. I do a lot with dreams, and that for me, ever since I was a child as well. This is another thing that's important. Again, I think I'm still on the tail of the New Grid Kid podcast that I recorded yesterday, that there were some pieces that I missed. But sleep space, energetic sleep space. And this has been a common thing with sometimes parents, like, I don't know why, he's having such trouble sleeping and what's going on. And so also, helping the starseeds and new grid kids to be able to protect their space. I know there are people who are of different schools of thought, so it's like, okay, but light and love is so all-powerful that you need no protection. In some senses, I guess that's true, but depending upon what energies are also allowed into the home. So, I mean, here's a child, they don't get to choose necessarily who's welcome in the home and who's not. So everybody that comes into the house can also bring different frequencies and energies. Now, myself personally, my home is an extension of the altar and the temple that I am. So in certain ways, there are just grids placed that are what they are. Yeah. And I'm really adamant of protecting sleep space. And I've had different ones over the years. Yeah. Literally bring their kids and say, I don't know what's going on, but it's happening every night. And I'd say, come, bring the kid, and they would sleep. And I would see who was coming into the field, what energies and what spirits. And so I still think it's just like there are certain people that maybe you are interested in, maybe you can see out and about. Hey, how are you? But you wouldn't necessarily want to invite them into your home. I also think that is can happen also with spirits. And so sometimes there's different energies that can hang around as well. And not that they need to be condemned in something, but just to see what that is. But I do think having an environment and using some of the elder spirits as far as stones or scents or specific lighting, and really having good boundaries about who's welcome in your home, and a good rule of thumb. And I'm not talking from a place of judgment. Yes, I'm speaking of if energetically there are certain people that you meet that energetically you feel drained, you feel like, that's a lot of work. Or maybe they have a lot going on. Maybe they're going through something, which in very real life, completely normal, not to be ostracized or judged. But maybe if that person's energy is frequenting and coming into the house and they're leaving little debris of energetics or even ancestors. I will speak of this too, because there are, and I've had this in my own lineages where we've had to also, sometimes there can be generational trauma. Yeah. And I don't like to overemphasize generational trauma in a sense that also our ancestors come with gifts and technology that is unbelievable. So absolutely, if there are things in the lineage that need to be cleared or that are sometimes coming up through the starseed in order for them to be seen, in order for them to get attention. And that has happened in different cases as well, is that someone would bring their child and they're having these horrific nightmares. It was simply an ancestor that was also just trying to get the attention as well, to have a retrieval, to return to the one heart, for that peace to be healed. And then as a gift, that starseed as well was facilitating that, but not having the language or understanding of what's happening or who is this energy, especially if it's maybe 5 or 6 generations behind, and maybe even the parents are not open to that. Is this the grandmother or who is it, right? So I just think it's really good to have boundaries and make sure that the sleep space for new grid kids, starseeds, including yourself, is pretty clear. And I don't think it has to be elaborate. I also think you can, sometimes if I've been traveling in different spaces, I will literally, before I even arrive at a space, I'll call in my WombShaman clan, my allies, and I'd be like, okay, before I get there, can you clear the space? I'm tired. I want to get some food. I don't want to have to clear the space. And you can ask your ancestors to go ahead and clear the space for you. And so, again, I think part of the point of this podcast, too, in speaking about channeling and demystifying it in a way, is to make it a normal part of the conversation. I do think that our world is ripe, and because there is so much transition and things and shifting, and a lot of what people considered normal is no longer normal, I think it's a huge invitation. And I see, again, as I am working with ones, and there are starseeds and new grid kids coming in, as well as they are already earthside, I think even ones who have not been open in the past are much more open to connecting with their own innate ancestry, their powers, their gifts, and wanting to connect deeper with the children as well. So, anyways, let's see if that feels complete. I think so. There's a poem that I would like to share. I think I'll do that in a different transmission. I'm going to offer a prayer and just kind of acknowledge the ancestors, the guardians of this land that I'm in, that I picked this beautiful spot a little bit further away from the water today. Let's just give thanks here, and I'll close. Egungun wa yana wanini, yana waneni, yana wanini. Egungun wa yana wanini, yana waneni, yana wanini. Egungun wa yana wanini, yana waneni, yana waneni. Fresh water, fresh water, fresh water, to freshen the path, to freshen the way. Beloved Mami Wata, we pray. May death be no more. May negativity and evil intention cease to be. We give praise to the highest of the high. the Creator Supreme Being who comes manifested as all the forces of nature. We salute the owner of this day. We salute the primordial mothers, the feminine forces of nature. We salute our sacred fathers and mothers in heaven, the mediums of the ancestors, as well as our own guiding ancestral spirits. May we all be connected to the remembrance of our own divinity. May we all remember to walk in the consciousness and light of our own power. May we all choose Iwa Pele, good character. May the ancestors remind us of our divinity and encourage us to make this world a better place for the next generation and all the generations to come. Ashe, Ashe, Asheo.